all deficits have negative consequences. Because the money to cover the deficit must be borrowed, this debt must at some point be repaid. Future taxpayers must pay the bill for current benefits. The government must also pay interest on the money which has been borrowed until the amount is repaid. Therefore, the cost of interest increases the amount of money the government owes. The deficit places additional burdens on future taxpayers who must not only provide government sufficient revenue to cover all the yearly expenses, including the interest on all borrowed funds, but also pay enough to create a surplus, which can be used to pay off at least a part of the debt the deficit or deficits have caused. In order to ensure that revenue will cover all expenses and create a surplus, the government may increase revenue through higher taxes. But there are dangers to this choice. If taxation requires too much of citizens, motivation to work and incentive to begin or expand a business may be diminished. Established businesses may seek locations with more favorable taxation, and economic growth may be limited. Or government can reduce spending. But there are also dangers to this alternative. There may be less investment in infrastructure, research, and other areas that prepare the country for the future. Programs which provide assistance and support for the needy may be reduced, leaving these individuals in jeopardy. Or public jobs may be cut and public spending reduced to the point that the economy may slow. Government could take other potentially harmful actions as the result of deficit spending. The government could print more money to increase the supply. This action would cause inflation. Inflation occurs when the amount of money increases relative to the amount of goods and services. Therefore, the value of the money would decline in relation to the worth of each good or service. For example, if the money supply were to double, the value of the money would be reduced by half. As a result, it would take twice as much money to equal a product's value. The product would cost twice as much. Devaluing money through inflation would make it easier for government to pay off its debt. The government would pay back money of lower value than the money it had borrowed. However, people would suffer because the reduced value of their money would buy fewer goods and services. If there is a very large deficit, or a series of deficits, which require large-scale borrowing, the government would use financial resources that would otherwise be available to private businesses and individuals. Businesses and individuals would then have more difficulty borrowing to purchase goods or expand production. Sizable government borrowing could also force interest rates to rise, making borrowing more expensive. Likewise, deficits which create a sizable debt make it difficult for the government to act in an emergency which requires extraordinary spending. There would likely be intense opposition to any action which would involve deficit spending because it would add to the existing debt. Because all deficits have negative consequences, deficit spending should be avoided and used only when absolutely necessary.